Alright guys, I'm going to demonstrate how to use one of these WP shock bleeders. If you look at my setup, I've got the bleeder attached to this little stand, so it's just strapped on to one of these clippy deals. Just clip that guy on there just to keep him stable. You can use tape or zip tie, whatever. I've got an air compressor hooked up to the left port. 45 psi and set on that regulator. That's important. You don't need more than that. And then I've got the vacuum pump here set up to this side. So first thing we're going to do is let the nitrogen out of the shock. And you just want to be careful when you do this. Just do it real slow. Twist it really slowly until you start hearing it. Okay, it's hissing out. You probably can't hear that, but it's the nitrogen's coming out of there. Okay, and just wait. It may take a minute or two to all come out. It's coming out slowly. Once it finishes and it's empty, then slowly, be careful, slowly unscrew that bolt all the way. Take it out. Okay, the bolt's out. This is a Racetech bolt. It's not a stock bolt. It's a Racetech bolt. It's been drilled and it has a rubber insert in it, and you can use a needle on that. Okay, the nitrogen's out of the shock. I'm going to go ahead and put the bolt back in. And this is important. You want to keep that bolt in there while you do all of this, because it's going to keep your piston in here at the right place. You got a piston it's floating. It's just a piece of plastic with the O-ring on it, and this is full of nitrogen, and this top little bit's full of oil, and the rest of the shock's full of oil, and that piston moves down as the shock shaft moves into the shock body. It pushes this piston down. Okay, and that thing has to be in the right place. So what we'll do is we'll close off the reservoir. Okay, that thing's sealed up again. Now I'm going to go ahead and get rid of the old oil. I've actually already drained the oil out of the shock just to make the video quicker, but I'm going to show you how to do it. Take the service bolt out of the top of the shock, and then your tool, it's got this black bolt right here. This is for storage. It's got an O-ring on it. It just keeps this thing from leaking oil all over your workspace. Take that out since it's time to use it. And then what you do is you take this tip off. I'll just set that on a paper towel. Oh. Put something on it there. So now I've got this thing, and this little bit of tubing is going to make it really easy to drain out the shock. So we'll screw that in. Okay, use the wrench. Just snug it in there. You're going to have to do it real tight. Now you got this thing. Take the shock out. Wherever your used oil pan is, just go ahead and work that shock in and out. Loosen your clickers and just work that thing in and out, and you'll feel it. Once all the oil's out of that thing, it's going to be real easy to push in and out. It's going to be hard at first because it's full of oil. You're going to be pushing on the oil. Once it's empty, you'll know. You can feel it. It gets a lot easier, and you'll just be getting air. Now you're not going to get 100% of the oil out of this. You're going to get most of it, but not all of it, unless you take the shock all the way apart. If you just want to do an oil change, you just hook this guy up, take it to your used oil pan, pump it till it's empty. Okay? Now, this is important. Once you do that, you want to take this back off. You want to check and make sure that your piston's in the right place. And if you do these steps exactly, you won't need to adjust the piston. It's going to be in the right place. You want that piston to be right there, about a ½ inch below the top of this hole. So if you can see the tool, I'm just going to hold it like that. I'm just going to stick it in there. I'm going to feel okay, I can feel the top of my piston right there. And that's how far it's in. It's about like that. That's perfect. It's just a little over an inch to where I can touch that thing. Okay? I can feel it in there. That's exactly where I want it. If you did need to adjust it for any reason, if you need to push it up, you can take that bolt out and stick something in there and push it up. Or you can come in from the top and push it down. But mine's right in the right place. And yours should be too. So I got it in the right place. The bolt is closed on bottom. If you have to adjust it down, you're going to need to take that bolt out so that the pressure can equalize in the top and the bottom. But mine's sealed up, it's in the right place, we're ready to service the shock. So I'm going to take this tip, put it back on. Just screw that on snug. Then go ahead and hook the machine back up. And we're ready to bleed this thing. Actually, one thing before we do that, we want to make sure we have enough oil in the machine, so take that back off. What I'm going to do is I'm going to open the vacuum port. I'm going to turn on my vacuum pump. Okay, so that thing's pulling right now. I got the vacuum open. This thing's sucking in. I'm just going to get this about 2/3 of the way full. I need just a little bit more oil in this. So all I do is dunk my tip into here. Okay. Just do it slowly. Start getting foam, it's okay. Okay. So now I got oil in there. I got a little bit of bubbles in there. You can get rid of that really easily. We just put this storage bolt back in. So I wanted to go slowly on this thing. And just let that oil degas a little bit. Okay, all of the gas is being pulled out of the oil right now. I don't want those bubbles to come all the way up and get sucked into the vacuum pump, so I'm just doing this slowly. Right now it's degassing that oil. Okay, I got a really strong vacuum in there right now. All of the gas is coming out of the oil. These bubbles look really big. You know, the bubbles look a lot bigger when they're under vacuum, so you can let that go for 10 minutes if you want to get your oil perfect. Just get rid of all the bubbles. I'm not going to do that right now. So I'm going to go ahead and turn this back on. Take my storage bolt out. Okay. Turn this off. Okay, now we're ready to put it back in the shock. Just get this thing snug. Okay, and the first pull that you do on the shock, you want to do a vacuum pull to get all the air out of there. It's going to suck this shaft in, and it's going to create a vacuum in here and get most of the air out. Turn the vacuum pump back on. Just go ahead and let it pull. Okay, it already pulled my shaft up really quick like that. Now it's pulling out air and old oil. And I'm down to 29 inches on that vacuum gauge. So I got a really strong vacuum in there. I'm just going to let it sit under vacuum. It's on a really strong vacuum right now. I'm just going to let it sit there for a second. Okay. I got 45 psi on the air compressor. I'm going to go ahead and push some oil back into the shock now. So this is vacuum's closed. My vacuum pump's off. And I'm going to We're going to let this go, and you want to see about 45 pounds in this bottle. And you can see the oil levels dropping. The oil is being pushed up and into the shock, and now my shaft is extended again. Okay, everything's stable, nothing's moving, so it's time to do another vacuum pull. This is closed. Open up the vacuum again. You see the shaft pulling in? It's pulling in nice and smooth now because this is full of oil. You want to keep an eye on this. If you start getting a lot of bubbles, you can stop so that they go back down. You're going to get bubbles when you got a gas in the oil and it's under a really strong vacuum. It's going to bubble up. So I'm getting a little bit of air coming out of here right now. You can see these bubbles. We'll just let that sit on the vacuum for a second. It's still under a really strong vacuum. I'm just going to let it sit like that for a second. I'm probably only going to have to do 4 or 5 cycles and this thing's going to be bled. It already looks pretty good. So I'm going to go ahead and do another pressure cycle. Slowly let it go up and watch the shaft. Okay. And when it extends like that, nice and smooth like that, it's because there's oil in there. There's not a lot of air. When there's air, it'll kind of notch, it'll jerk out. Okay, that thing's sitting at 45 psi, everything looks good. Turn off the air. I'm going to go back to vacuum. Okay, that thing's still under full vacuum. It's pulling out. Now all I can see is little bubbles in there. There's not much air left in this thing. It's pretty well bled. I'm going to do like one more cycle and it's done. It's already better than you would be able to get it by doing a hand bleed right now. Okay, I'm going to go back to pressure. Okay, we're at 45 pounds. Shock's coming out nice and slow. And actually, I'm going to call it done right there. You can go more cycles if you want. This is a linkage shock. It's just got a single piston in it. So it'll probably bleed a little quicker than a PDS shock. But that's pretty much it. It's done. Okay, now here's an important step. If you undo this right now while you got pressure in there, you're going to get oil everywhere. So what we're going to do is we're going to disconnect the air line. And okay, no more pressure in there. Some oil's coming back in because that piston was pushed down from all that pressure. It's coming back up to where we had set it. And that's where we want it when we cap that off. So that looks perfect. Everything's good. On the newer bleeders, I've got a pressure relief valve that'll automatically open if you go over 60 pounds of pressure. It's just for safety. And instead of taking this off and opening that to bleed off the pressure, you can just lift this thing when you're done at the last cycle and it'll bleed off all your pressure. And there's no need to take off the hose. You can just lift up on that guy and it'll release all your pressure for you. Okay, there's no pressure. I'm at 0 on this, so it's safe to take this off. When you do this, you just loosen that. Get a paper towel, hold it right next to it, because just a little bit, not much is going to come out, but a little bit is going to come out. Okay. I'm going to put my storage bolt back in. And you can't see, but there's a little bit of oil coming out. It's less than an ounce. It's just a little bit coming out. And what I'm going to do now is One more time I'm going to check and make sure my piston's where I want it, and it's still there, right where I had it. Okay, it's perfect. This thing's bled, there's no air coming out of there, it's all oil. I'm going to put the service bolt back in. Okay, that shock is done. All I got to do now is recharge the nitrogen. Since I'm using one of these needle setups, I just come in, I set my regulator to 150 psi, take my needle, stick it in, wait for it to settle on the gauge here, wait a second, take it out of my needle, is done. Okay. And that's pretty much it. This shock's ready to go. Once that nitrogen's filled up, it's ready to use. The only other thing I can tell you is when you store this thing, you may want to take this storage bolt out, turn your vacuum on, and just let it pull all this oil that's in this line out of there. Okay. And that's it. Thanks for watching.